Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are this year's the 2020 Super Bowl champions as the Buccaneers dominate the Chiefs 31-9. It is Sunday, February 7th, in the edition of the Iman Report. If you like what you see, give this video a big like, and of course, please be kind and hit that subscribe button. What can I say? Tom Brady, I hate the guy, but he is a GOAT. Yes, he is a GOAT. Number 7, he did it in Tampa Bay. 1 with Tampa Bay, 6 in New England. Enough said about Tom Brady, but it wasn't just Tom Brady the reason why he won this game. It was Tampa Bay making Kansas City pay for their mistakes. You got to give a lot of credit to Todd Bowles. A lot of Tampa Bay made Kansas City paid every time Patrick Mahomes committed a turnover. And Todd Bowles just had the right scheme to shut down Patrick Mahomes. I think it's time for in 2022, the next coaching cycle, Todd Bowles deserves a second chance at a head coaching gig. I think Todd Bowles got the shaft in New York, and he actually did better than what was expected in the Jets when Todd Bowles was coaching the Jets. So I certainly think in the next coaching cycle, Todd Bowles deserves a second chance to be a head coach. Byron Leftwich, I think in 2022, he's now going to be a name on the list to be a head coach. So now you got 2 head coaching candidates just from this game. Leftwich played a great game too. So Arians, congratulations. He gets his first Super Bowl ring. Gronkowski, 2 touchdowns. Antonio Brown gets a Super Bowl ring. Yo Gabba Gabba, former 49er Blaine Gabbert gets a Super Bowl ring. But Tampa, the champions, the good news there. The better news is the rest of the South is going to be in flux in 2020 next season. Drew Brees looks like he is all but certain going to retire this offseason. So I do think the Saints might be an 8-8 team with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill next year. Carolina. Who knows what does Carolina do at quarterback this offseason? Do they draft a quarterback? Do they maybe make a run at Deshaun Watson? But Carolina, an up-and-coming team, but I don't think they're going to contend next year, just not yet. Atlanta is very intriguing. Now you've got Arthur Smith in Atlanta next year. He could certainly be the guy that could get another couple years out of Matt Ryan. Is Matt Ryan the long-term solution in Atlanta? So there's a lot of questions with Matt Ryan. So this next year, Tampa is likely going to be the odds-on favorites to win the South next year. So Tampa's got an easy path to win the South next year. As for Kansas City, defenses are now going to be looking at this game, looking at the film, ways to slow down and scheme against Patrick Mahomes. Also, the Chiefs could not flip the switch this time. How do they go attacking into the 2021 season? So there's a lot of questions there. How much of a hangover will Patrick Mahomes have next year? But by no means are they done. But teams like Buffalo that are near the top, Buffalo has to be looking at that. Buffalo's defenses has to be looking at that tape. Certainly Buffalo is going to be a team that's going to be back next year. Baltimore. But Baltimore is going to have Cleveland nipping at their legs too. Cleveland, an up-and-coming team. If they can get some pieces on defense, Cleveland's another team that could be out hunting Kansas City. So Kansas City has become the hunted. How will they do in a revenge tour in 2021? And of course, Andy Reid's son, charged with DUI. So there could be a lot of this, so you could give a little bit of an excuse of a distraction there. But by no means, I think Kansas City will be back in the Super Bowl next year. Unless things go off the rails. But with the West is going to get better. You've got now LA Chargers, they have Justin Herbert. They now have a new head coach. Now I'm getting a little bit of a brain fart. Give me. But you got Brandon Staley over there in with the LA Chargers next year. Question's going to be who does Staley bring in to run the offense next year as Staley looks to beef up that Chargers defense. If the Chargers played like they did towards the end of last season, I kind of think the Chargers could be a team to watch in the West. Denver, if they can upgrade at quarterback next year, all of a sudden that West could get a lot tighter. Raiders, there's a team that could be a team that could go either way next year. They've got Derek Carr, they've got Henry Ruggs, but the defense is god awful in Vegas. How will they retool the defense this offseason? This could be a very fun if the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders get some good pieces, all of a sudden the West might get a lot more competitive. But I'm not certain that any of these teams will compete with the Chiefs as of yet. But they are going to be the hunted. And yeah, Chargers, they do have Justin Herbert. They do have Joey Bosa. If they can get it all together, they certainly could be the team that could be one of the worst to first teams next year. Denver, if they find the right quarterback and you get Von Miller back from injury next year, Denver could be that team that rebounds next year. The Raiders, if they can find some pieces on defense, the Raiders, but also there's rumors Derek Carr might be traded, Marcus Mariota on the trading block. Who knows? I have no confidence in John Gruden though. But the door is still wide open for the Chiefs. As for Tampa, the door is still wide open. Is next year going to be Tom Brady's last year? Will it be Arians' last year? I certainly think they're going to make one more run of it. And now they could walk away pretty quickly with the NFC South. The teams that are going to be the top competition for the Buccaneers next year, the Los Angeles Rams. Yeah, I think Stafford's going to make the Rams a much better team. The Rams are definitely a contender next year in the NFC. If the 49ers find the right quarterback, the 49ers all of a sudden are right back in it next year. You've got the Green Bay Packers. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So there's certainly a lot of questions going to go into this offseason here. I'm going to kind of go through right now burning questions kind of for all 32 teams here. We'll start with Arizona. Arizona, a team that just fell short of the playoffs last year. Expectations now are to make the playoffs next season. Now the hot seat is on Cliff Kingsbury. Can Kyler get the Cardinals to a playoffs? If the Cardinals miss the playoffs next year, I do think it will be adios for Cliff Kingsbury. Atlanta, the quarterback issue. Is it going to be Ryan? Are the Falcons going to draft a quarterback? Can Arthur Smith make the right hire at defensive coordinator? The door is open for Atlanta to maybe sneak in as a wild card next year. So this is something that the GM and certainly Arthur Blank will be discussing in the coming weeks now. Atlanta could be one of the teams that certainly could rebound with Arthur Smith at head coach. Baltimore, can Lamar Jackson throw a football? The defense is legit, but certainly Baltimore, one of the top contenders next year to make a playoff run. Buffalo, can Buffalo get over the hump next year? Can Buffalo beat Kansas City? Buffalo is certainly going to be out for revenge on Kansas City next year. Can Buffalo and Josh Allen sustain the success he had this last season? You've got Carolina. Carolina, is it going to be Bridgewater next year? Does Carolina acquire a quarterback? Does Carolina draft a quarterback? I like what I see out of Matt Rule out of right now in Carolina. And Carolina, I don't think it's going to be next year, but Carolina is a year or two away from being a playoff team. Chicago, an interesting story. Now they are rumored to be trading for Carson Wentz. I don't know. I think that could certainly be a trade that could probably cause a regression for Chicago next year. I don't think Wentz is too injury prone. His confidence is rattled, and Chicago is cursed as in terms of quarterback. I think it's going to send Chicago the wrong way with, unfortunately, there. Cincinnati. Cincinnati needs to start trending in the right direction. I don't think they need to make the playoffs. But Zach Taylor's on the hot seat, and Cincinnati needs to start rattling off more wins. Hopefully Joe Burrow will be back. Burrow is certainly the face of the franchise in Cincinnati. But Cincinnati, they got to find out. They got to plug some holes on defense this offseason. Cleveland. Can Cleveland win the North next year? Can they get a good enough defense? Can they get over the hump and beat Baltimore next year? Baltimore has owned Cleveland, but I think Cleveland's like right on the verge of being a legitimate playoff contender. We'll see what offseason moves the Browns make this offseason. And now you get to Dallas. Will Dallas franchise tag Dak Prescott? All signs looks like Dak Prescott will be back in Dallas next year. Can Mike McCarthy make it work? Mike McCarthy, another coach on the hot seat over there in Dallas next season. Dallas, always a drama story every season. So certainly we'll have some fun storylines with Dallas next year. Detroit, Denver. We'll go to Denver. Denver, another team with quarterback questions. Will they go back to Drew Lock next season? Will they bring in another quarterback? Could they be one of the teams in the market for a Sam Darnold? Do they maybe make a run at Deshaun Watson? But Denver, they at least need to find another quarterback that will compete with Drew Lock next year. I feel like Denver is a team that is like right on the verge of being a playoff team. And the good news for Denver is they're getting back Von Miller. So Denver could be that team that could make a big leap forward. And Fangio will be on the hot seat in Denver next year. Detroit, tank. I think they're tanking for Sam Howell, Kadion Slovis, Spencer Rattler. But for Detroit, it is they're finally tearing it down to the bolts. Green Bay, is next year going to be Aaron Rodgers' last hurrah? Probably next year, Jordan Love's probably be backing up Aaron Rodgers next year. Aaron Rodgers, no spring chicken. But can Green Bay get over the hump next season? Can they beat Tampa Bay next year? A lot of questions regarding Green Bay. They came close, but can they get over the hump next year in Green Bay? Houston, trade Watson. For the love of God, please trade Deshaun Watson. Chances are, I think Watson is going to end up holding out even though it's going to cost Watson some money and fines and stuff, I still think Watson's just simply going to hold out until he's traded, or at worst he retires. I don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun, but do the right thing, Houston. It's time to rebuild. Trade Watson. He's not happy there. And maybe Cal McNair needs to sell the Texans at this point. Indy, who will be the quarterback in Indianapolis next year? As of right now, the only quarterback on the roster is Jacob Eason. I don't think Eason is ready to be an NFL starter, but do they go after Darnold? I think you put Darnold with Reich, I don't think Darnold's a bad quarterback. I think the problem was Adam Gase. So, bringing Darnold to Indy, could you imagine? I think Darnold will be a much better quarterback with Frank Reich. Reich got some really good quarterbacking out of Phillip Rivers, who I thought was washed coming out of the Chargers. So I think Frank Reich could be the magic bolt, could be the guy that fixes Sam Darnold. And then you've got Jacksonville. Question is, what will year one? I don't like the fact that their GM is now Trent Baalke. Mr. ACL tear Trent Baalke is the GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars. That scares me. But they do have Urban Meyer. They do have Trevor Lawrence. Can they market a team in Jacksonville now with Urban Meyer? Certainly Gator fans will be happy to go to games in Jacksonville next year with Urban Meyer being the head coach. Urban Meyer is either going to be boom or bust for the Jaguars. Now let's go to the Las Vegas Raiders. Do they trade Carr? Do they trade Carr? Do they trade Mariota? But now they got to look, but can they solve the defensive holes? That's got to be the real question for the Raiders. Can they fill the holes on defense? Can they get the right defensive scheme? Look, Denver's going to get better next year. The Chargers are going to be better next year. The Raiders could be on the bottom next year if they whiff in this year's draft. The Los Angeles Chargers. I think the future is looking bright for the Chargers. Can they plug the right holes at defense this offseason for the Chargers? This will be a very good draft for the Chargers coming up. Los Angeles Rams. Can Matthew Stafford finally be the quarterback he could never be in Detroit, in LA? Certainly Cooper Kupp is going to be happy. Robert Woods will be happy. This could be a very fun Rams team next year. The Miami Dolphins. Is Tua the face of the franchise? Can Tua improve next year? Can Tua cut down on the mistakes? The defense is very good for Miami. Tua needs to have maybe a preseason and a training camp is what the doctor orders for Tua. Minnesota Vikings. Is Kirk Cousins going to be there next year? Will Minnesota listen to offers for Kirk Cousins this offseason? Minnesota kind of could go either way next year. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with Kirk Cousins this offseason. New England Patriots. Who's going to be Who's going to be the signal caller in New England? Will the Patriots finally draft a quarterback? There is a lot of questions going into this offseason with the Patriots. And now this is going to be one of the toughest offseasons coming for Bill Belichick. The New York Giants. Is Daniel Jones the franchise quarterback? This is going to be make or break for Daniel Jones. Will the Giants get some better weapons for Daniel Jones? Will Saquon be back with the Giants next year? A lot of questions for the New York Giants going into this offseason. But Joe Judge is looking like the right hire in New York. The New York Jets. Can Robert Saleh bring culture change? Will Darnold stay or go? Will the Jets draft a quarterback with their number 2 pick? How can Robert Saleh change the culture in New York? The New Orleans Saints. Cap hell is not fun. Can the Saints win with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston? But this is maybe a team that's going to certainly have regressions next year. The Philadelphia Eagles. Is Jalen Hurts going to be the face of the franchise in Philadelphia? Can they get back to being a team that gets back to the playoffs next year? Still, the East is not that great of a division, so the door is open for the Eagles to rebound next year. So there's a lot of questions there. Pittsburgh. Is this going to be Big Ben's last hurrah? Pittsburgh needs to draft a quarterback this offseason. Big Ben cannot last forever. And you can't go in with next year with Haskins being your backup quarterback next year. You gotta draft a quarterback next year to sit behind Big Ben. I think next year will be Big Ben's last year in the NFL. San Francisco, find the quarterback. Will San Francisco acquire a quarterback? Will San Francisco draft a quarterback? Can they find that quarterback that gets San Francisco right back into the playoff race next year? Seattle, is this the beginning of the end of Russell Wilson? Wilson showing some regression next year, towards the end of the year. Wilson taking a lot of hits. Seattle must address the offensive line, or Seattle could have a big regression going into next season. Tennessee. Can Tennessee address the defense this offseason? If the Titans don't address the defense, they could be primed for a regression. The Washington football team. Can Washington get that quarterback? Ron Rivera has already done a great job in year 1 of changing the culture in DC, and hopefully the football team can find their quarterback. But it will be a winnable division next year. Those are my thoughts. It's on to the draft. Everybody have a good offseason. I'll be back next week after UFC 258 Burns versus Usman. Good night.